we can then look to answer those at the end. So without further ado, Hummingbird Technologies is a data analytics company. We use a variety of imagery sources, dominantly satellite imagery, and that's the main one that we're going to focus on here today. We do also offer high resolution UAV imagery, which is more predominantly used in the fresh produce sector. The main aims of Hummingbird, I think, align with a lot of the John Deere aims when it comes to technology. So we're looking at how we can reduce inputs while maximizing yields on farm, and use the data to making and help with sustainable practices. We do this via ingesting imagery, so yeah, satellite and UAV imagery, and we run through our web. On there, you can view all of the images, and you can then create a very large number of variable rate applications. The variable rate nitrogen, as we're about to come to that season. Once you generate those plans, you can then share those with the John Deere Ops Centre, and that is, yeah, our link between our platform and theirs. So I will take you through quickly what that looks like. So as we've discussed, we've got this API with John Deere, which was set up earlier this year, which is, you know, a brilliant link. So it's there to help with data transfer and ease with data sharing, and being able to the plans that you generate directly with the John Deere Ops Centre obviously minimises pain and friction, the applicational use. So once you've selected your survey and you've created your application plan in our platform, you can then select the download and send to partner option. And I will take you through a live demonstration of this towards the end. But what this allows you to do, your Hummingbird platform with the John Deere Ops Centre, and the first time that you do that, it will just prompt you to enter in your JD Ops login details. And then it will send it through to your John Deere Ops Centre portal. Then from within here, you can then send that application plan to any of the relevant equipment that's going to be doing the work out in the field. And just an example of one of the John Deere clients that has gone through steps and see the application plan in the JD console in the tractor out in the field, applying that variable rate plan. So first thing I'm going to take you through is our Farmvision satellite package. Now this is our annual subscription, and what this gives you is all year round crop monitoring. So you would typically get 2 to 3 images a week come through onto the platform of your farm and the fields that you have onboarded. And that will show you NDVI imagery, which is crop health and biomass, imagery, crop variability analysis. We have within Hummingbird developed a cloud detection masking algorithm, which for the UK especially is essential because we are a cloudy little island. What this actually allows us to do is ingest more imagery and provide more usable imagery back to you on the platform. This also includes our analytics dashboards, display and field benchmarking, which again, I will take you through in more detail on the live demo. And it also includes all of the onboarding and multiple cropping in the same season and field, which if you have winter cover crops going into spring crops is a really good and useful addition. Some of these in a little bit more detail is some examples of the analysis layers that are provided on the platform. So this first image is actually looking at green area index, which I'm going to run through with you next. We've then got the cloud detection algorithm you can see working there. So it's masked out the area of the field that has cloud cover, but you can still see over 2/3 of the rest of that field, the variability in the crop health and biomass. And the other areas would be looking at our analytics portal, which is part of that package. So it allows you on the leaderboard to rank all of the fields on the farm in terms of performance based on their crop health and biomass. You can filter that down by crop type. So you're only looking at your winter wheat, for example, or your oilseed rape. And you can filter by if you really want to do some in-depth comparison. Our survey, which allows you at the moment to select 4 fields on the farm and performance time period based from their track the ones struggling. So what green area and variable rate nitrogen application plans. What we've done here at Hummingbird is we've taken the science that was derived from us looking at the optimal canopy index that's needed at flowering, yield potentials. And it all the amount of nitrogen needed kilograms per hectare to build green area index up unit by unit. The optimal, they're trying to and we have done extensive trials and research to validate this tool, giving a very high accuracy on the imagery that we provide. This is just breaking down a lot of the science and the GAI canopy management everyone is aware of, but it's looking at what is needed to build that canopy up to 3.5 at flowering. What our tool allows you to do is monitor the oilseed rape throughout the season, and especially over the winter months as we come into the onset of spring growth, and understand variability across, because rarely in any is it just one GAI. So once you have this analysis, we can do generating the variable rate plan. And as you can see here, this is just an example of the calculation that is behind the scenes in our algorithm on our platform. So you'll understand how we're building this plan that you can then use for crops on the farm. I will take you through we generate this, but once we understand the starting point of the variation in the GAI across the field, we can then an action plan that will allow you to precision your nitrogen or fertilizer. And 3.5. Also, data done with clients over the last 4 seasons to show the return, and that's something from a client that's used this. They had an input saving of 22% with no negative impact on yields at harvest. To the customer, also, so there, an optimal amount to So what we've done with the variable rate nitrogen application plans is we are using the from the satellites, and we're looking again at the across the field. So you know is of higher and the clients the flexibility to be able to adjust the variation on the nitrogen that's most suitable for you. We've also built in the functionality that maybe at the start of the season, you might want to put more nitrogen on the lower growth areas of the crop to see if you can kick it on and level up the canopy. And we've also then got the ability to flip that logic. So you can put more nitrogen onto the higher growth areas for later in the season if you are trying to really bump up your grain nitrogen content. So what I'm going to do, let me just come out of here, and I'm going to go into a live platform view. So hopefully everyone can see this. But this is our UK demo account, and a very typical view of what you would see if you are logging into our platform. So it allows you to see the farm that you're currently on. Now, if you're a farm manager and you've got multiple farms that you're viewing, you can change that in the drop down. The next area that we're going to have a look at is the season that we're currently looking in. One of the benefits of having satellite imagery is we're able to satellite imagery for 5 years. So if you wanted to assess the farm performance over time, or you wanted to see how crops were performing historically, then that would be able to provide you. The next area that you select is if you only want to look at specific crops. So if I was, for example, just to look at oilseed rape, apologies, it's timed me out. Hold on, let me just log in. To look at oilseed rape fields, I can go back to all crop, will show me all of those. We've got the themes and the boundaries, and a quick summary of the current crop that's in that field and the size of the field. You will notice these this is the average NDVI score from the last satellite survey. And I'll click into that momentarily and show you. You can also hover over any of these fields and it gives you a summary of that field name, the crop in the field, the size of that field, and the boundaries. It will zoom me in to that field view, and we can start looking at all the different analytical layers that I was describing as part of the Farmvision package. The first thing that I would note is that we have a date banner across the top. And this is where you would go into and scroll back through the imagery for the season that you are currently in, or the historical season if you were looking at one of those. You will notice that we've then got weather icons in these images. So this is the cloud detection algorithm working. So for example, on the 12th of August, we had a clear image as opposed to the 14th where it was cloudy. And so that's just letting you know that we tried to look for an image, but it wasn't available. And then the third option is you see the cloud and the sun. So this is when you hover over it, giving you the percentage of cloud cover for that field. So on that image, there was a 14% cloud cover. So that gives you a really good proportion for the rest of the field that you would still be able to look at and use. If I was to then stop to some of the other analytical layers, so the photographic imagery that goes along with that survey, and again, if I just drop that down, you can see it correlates very clearly with the NDVI imagery. So you've got these areas of much higher biomass as opposed to especially this area of the field, which is much lower in comparison. And that correlates again with the NDVI imagery. The NDVI imagery works on a traffic light system. So the greener the image, the higher the crop biomass and health, as opposed to the amber and then going into the redder areas where it's lower in comparison. So you can see we've got some really good variability across this field. Other areas that you'll notice here is that we have the field information, the crop, the variety, current season date, and you've also got the ability to add in the harvest date as well. If we jump into running through the application view, the other area that I'll show you overall, then jump into the analytical view. And this is the area that I was showing you earlier that allows you to link your field performance. So it lists all of the fields that we've got on the farm for the current season. And you can then filter those down by crop type if you wanted to. And again, variety and also drilling date. And we can then order these highest to lowest or lowest to highest. And this is based on the last satellite survey that went across this field. So it's a really good tool to map the progression of the crops throughout the season. You can very quickly use this, I think, to identify the fields that are performing very well versus the fields that are performing quite poorly, and take action and management decisions with that. The other area that it allows us to do is, if I was to click on 4 of these fields and compare them, there we go, you will see the progression in their NDVI and biomass over time. So it's taken from days from drilling. So if you were, for example, wanting to just look at your wheat fields, so I have 2 here, the purple line and the green line, you can see and track the progression of those over time, how they progress through the winter, the onset of spring growth, and then the dips would usually coincide with harvest dates. But again, if you're wanting to do a couple of fields in order to be able to. So what I'm going to go on to now, through an example of very nitrogen in oilseed rape. So again, on the demo farm, I've gone back to the 2018-19 season. You will notice here, we've got a couple of different icons, and these are drone flights, which is an additional service that we could provide to you. And it gives much higher resolution imagery. It tends to be used more in the fresh produce sector, but we have a number of arable farmers who use it as well. So what we're looking at here is a survey from the 14th of February, and you will see the variation that we've got across the field. Now, if you hover over any of these grids, it gives you the GAI score for that grid. So you can see we've got a lot of variability across the field. We've got really good establishment and higher GAI levels in this section, as opposed to working our way down through this middle section, and it's a lot lower. So you can see the variability that we've got there. If I open up the pop-up at the bottom, you'll also notice under the green area index, we've got the average GAI score for the field, which again is a really good and useful metric to have. So what I'm going to do, if we jump into application plans, is we're going to look at nitrogen from GAI. Now, because this is the demo site, there is a plan that's already created. So if you had created a plan before, you could either view the current plan, or we can go to create new. And I am going to create a new plan. So this is the flow that we would go through in order to get the plan generated. The first area that we're going to have a look at is now, if you have that is a value in here, but ordinarily I think most people would use the R09 book values to help determine what that score is going to be. So we're going to leave it at the moment at 30, which is a very typical score, especially for this area that we're working in. The next, again, RV209 is the efficiency of recovery. Now, ordinarily, this would be starting at 60 and would it will also be down 5% again if you were using a urea-based fertiliser. For this application, because I know that we're not using urea, but we are on a chalky soil. And then the element here is the target yield. Now, this is really important. It's realistic calculation, and in 4, but you can change it to whatever is most appropriate for you and your farm. The final area that you don't necessarily need to put anything into, but is an area where you can put in a cap and a collar. So you've got a minimum rate and a maximum rate of fertilizer that you want to use. Now, this is really useful for NVZ sensitive areas, especially, and something that maybe you want to have a look at and take into consideration. For the time being, I'm going to leave them blank, and we'll go on to the next section, which allows you to determine how many splits you're going to use on that field and crop for the spring applications. So we've got the ability to have 1, 2, or 3, and you then just need to apportion the percentage. So whether you want to front load or back load your nitrogen, completely flexible and allows you to make those decisions. I'm going to leave it at 2 splits to start off with, and 60% on the first one, 40% on the second. We can then look at liquid fertilizer. This can be different for each split, so you that's one or the other. So if we were looking at a solid fertilizer, it would then just require the nitrogen percentage of that fertilizer. We can then potentially change the second one over to a liquid. And again, you would just need to change the nitrogen percentage for that. You've also got the option within liquid to do weight volume or weight. So you've got a more accurate. Once you've put all of that information in, we can preview that plan. And what you will then see is on the left-hand side, we've got a summary of the plan, and also a summary by split. So looking at the first split where I had put in solid fertilizer, and the second split where we had put in liquid fertilizer. You can also then hover over any of these grids, and it will give you the amount of nitrogen that's going to be applied, kilograms per hectare within those. If you want to sense check any of that, you can use this toggle button. So this will just jump you back to the analysis. So you can see in these areas where we have very good starting GAI score, it is putting a lower amount of that are in GAI. It's putting a much higher amount of nitrogen on those areas, all with the build out to 3.5 at flowering. Once you have generated the plans, you can then download them. And this is where the API link with the Ops Center, really comes into play. So if we click on the send to partner, we have got then the John Deere option. We'll confirm that, and if it was the first time that you did this, it would ask you, which would then connect them up with each other. That plan sent over centre, and you would be able to share that with the machinery in field. With any of these plans, they are really easy to go back through and edit. So if you, after your first split, decided actually you want to change the nitrogen from a liquid to a solid or vice versa, or you wanted to add in additional splits, you can go back through the process again, editing that and changing what you need for it. So the next example I'm going to run through is looking at, again, I'm using the UK demo farm, but I'm going to look at generating a serial application plan. So you can see here, I've selected on this field of winter wheat, and we've got some noticeable variation with the biomass throughout this field. So we've got much better areas of crop establishment and canopy in these regions, as opposed to these sections here, which are much lower. And if I open up the pop-up, you can use the NDVI graph here to really understand the changes and the variation that you have in the field. In the same way, if you wanted to sense check that and look at the NDVI and the photographic imagery, it will allow you to do that. You can also, scroll back through the dates and find the image that's most applicable to you. Some of the main differences that we've got here between the oilseed rape and the cereals application plans is with the cereals plan, because we know how many units of GAI we need to build, we generate the plan at the onset of spring growth, and it then gives you those splits that you need for that nitrogen period. With the cereals plan, it allows you to generate an application plan based on the most recent imagery and the one that's most applicable to you. So if you were planning to do a nitrogen plan every month or every 3 to 4 weeks from sort of February onwards, then you would look for the most recent imagery to inform that plan. So I'll stick with the 2nd of March as our starting point. And again, if I go into the pop-up, it gives you the field information, the crop and the variety, the current season and the drilling date. And we can then jump into application plans. Again, we're going to have a look at nitrogen based off NDVI, which is the crop health and biomass. We have, again, got the option of either view the current plan or we can create a new one. So I'm going to create a new one. Now, the first area and information that we're looking at here is the logic that we want to use. So the question is, do we want to put more nitrogen onto the higher growth areas or lower growth areas? And again, this is very much down to user preference and also the time of year. Are you trying to level up the canopy, or are you trying to really push nitrogen content in the grain? So for now, I'm going to leave this ticked, which is going to put more nitrogen to the lower growth areas. It's then looking again at the nitrogen concentration percentage of the fertilizer. So I'm going to leave that as 34. And the average rate, what would you ordinarily put on that field as the, I'm going to use 150 for this plan to whatever is most applicable for you. We then look at the third section, is the variation. How much below average to go. In here, example 50 is very interchangeable. So maybe if I wanted to put 60, that would then put 30 above and 30 below. Let's preview that and we can have a look at that plan. If I zoom in there. So again, on the left-hand side, you've got a summary of everything that has gone into generating that plan. And it has a summary of the amount of nitrogen that's going to be used and required. If we were to sense check this, so if I toggle back to my preview, in these areas where there is lower biomass, so if we look up here and also down in this corner, and I then go back to the application plan, it is putting a higher amount of nitrogen onto those areas, as opposed to the other areas of the field that are already well established. It's putting lower amounts of nitrogen onto there. So an interesting part to look at is the average rate of nitrogen for that field. So in our plan, we had put in, it was going to be 150. Now, from generating the application, the average rate has gone up by 2 kilograms. So it's only marginally increased the nitrogen use here, but what it's done is it's targeted the nitrogen into the areas of the field that are going to benefit most from it. So again, you're really looking at utilizing the precision technology there to level up your canopies, maximizing your yield potentials, and also targeting your inputs there. Once you are happy with this plan, and if you don't need to go back in and edit it, again, in the same way, we can download that plan and we can send to our John Deere Ops Center. That will then be there in the platform for you to send to the relevant equipment out in field. That is, the main areas that